What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the RV show. My name is Rohan.
And my name is Vinay. So election week is over, and Joe Biden has been elected the 46th president of the United States. At this point, Biden has 279 electoral votes, while Trump has 214. Some sources, such as AP and Fox, have declared that Arizona has been called for Biden, which puts Biden at 290 votes instead of 279. Biden is also winning the popular vote by almost 5 million people. Either way, Biden clinched the victory by winning Pennsylvania. En route to this newfound presidency, Biden flipped and maintained key battleground states, including Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania. This is a historic victory for two reasons. First, Biden has earned the most votes for any presidential candidate in history at 75 million, and still counting. Second, Kamala Harris has become the first woman, the first Black person, and the first South Asian to be the vice president. A woman of color is now in one of the most powerful positions in America, a truly historic feat. Now the aftermath. President Trump has pushed for legal proceedings in three key states, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Georgia. And it looks like recounts are happening in Wisconsin and Georgia. However, states like Pennsylvania and Nevada have pretty close margins, so we'll see. Both candidates gave speeches yesterday to not only their supporters, but to people around the nation. Biden made comments about hope, unity, and community. He claimed that he would work for all Americans to rebuild this country. Trump just said what he normally says, things like the Democrats stole the election, that he would take this to the Supreme Court. He said that if you count the, quote, legal votes, then Trump easily wins. But if you count the illegal votes, and he's referencing mail-in ballots to that, he said that then Biden wins. So, Ron, there's a pretty big contrast in the statements of both Biden and Trump. So how do you feel about their speeches?
Right. So, I guess like first of all, like congrats to Joe Biden. He very convincingly won, I think. Um, I think Biden is taking like a pretty good approach, and he's been saying this like through the entire like election week. Um, like when like no one really knew who was gonna win, when like all the states were really competitive. He was kind of like saying like we'll get through this, everyone. Stay patient. Um, all votes must be counted. And I really think like that narrative that Biden had created before is what kind of sets him up to have a successful presidency. Um, because right now you see like Biden is being very like um happy, like being like very positive, and is looking towards the future of America, and is like talking about how he's going to be a president for both sides, even people who didn't vote for him. Whereas Trump, he's being like a sore loser essentially, and he's not really living up to American standards, and he's not accepting that he lost the election, um, even though like he very convincingly lost it.
So I guess my second question was, do you think Trump is being a sore loser? His claim is valid. You obviously said that you
Yeah,
think he's being a sore loser. But I would
I
say
mean,
that I don't necessarily, I think that he is being a sore loser right now. But all these statements that he's making about how mail-in ballots are fraudulent, it's like unlike other statements that he's made in the past, he's actually been pretty consistent with this. Because even before the election, even before election day, in all of the debates, he said mail-in ballots are fraudulent. Mail-in ballots are fraudulent. So I think that while I don't agree that mail-in ballots are fraudulent, I do think that he's at least remained consistent with his points.
right.
So
Yeah.
do
And
you think there's any? Oh, sorry.
sorry. So like I like on that point about mail-in ballots, and like Trump's consistency, like I guess you can say on that one point he was pretty consistent. Like, but during election week, like he obviously wasn't consistent. Like we saw him saying like continue the vote in some areas and stop the vote in other areas. Like obvious like hypocrisy there.
Mhm.
I think in general, like on this argument about mail-in ballots, about his if his claims are valid. I'm not sure if you'll agree with me here, but I think to some extent in every election, there's some like there's like a little bit of fraud. Like it's going to happen. We're taking 100 like we're taking like 100 million votes here. We're like to like determine like the election of like the entire country. Like there's no way we're gonna get it like perfect, right?
Hmm.
But I don't think there's voter fraud to the extent where like a couple thousand ballots in each state are wrong. So like
Yeah.
in states like Wisconsin and states like Pennsylvania, where like the margins are fairly close, but Trump is still down by like 10, 20,000 votes. Like even if there was voter fraud, I don't see it reversing the election.
Yeah, I think before the election, I did some research on this, and based off previous elections and how they've been held, it was more likely for a person to be struck by lightning than to commit mail-in ballot voter fraud in the United States. So I think that kind of shows how illegitimate Trump's claims really are. So it's really unlikely. And it's like add on to that, I think 25.8% of people in the 2018 Senate elections voted through mail-in ballots. And like obviously the Republicans had the Senate at that time. So I feel like if Trump is saying, okay, mail-in ballots are fraudulent, then you could say, okay, basically every other election which has gone the Republicans' way, technically those could have also been fraudulent through his logic.
Right. Exactly.
So, do you think there's actually a chance that the courts will buy Trump's cases? And like, in addition to that, obviously he put in Amy Coney Barrett as the as another Supreme Court justice. So, do you think that could have an impact on what the court rules?
Um, yeah, I don't like. I think a majority of lower courts are going to like deny like
Mm.
um a lot of like the cases that Trump's going to bring up. Like a good example is in like in Pennsylvania, for instance, like the one case that Trump won was like getting more poll watchers, but they lost the case about like halting the vote, and like throwing out certain votes. I think like even if it were to go to the Supreme Court, he's just not losing by enough. Sorry, he's just not winning um like enough votes in those states. Like Biden is just winning by too much and he's losing by too much for like voter fraud to be an actual issue. And I think to some extent, like Supreme Court judges were like are committed to like bipartisanship when because like this is like about like actual morality and what needs to be
Mhm.
in the Constitution. Um, So to like some extent, Supreme Court justices have to throw like their political bias out the window. And when you realize that this has been a completely fair presidential election, I don't see like there being a pretty good chance for Trump to like win a case at the Supreme Court level either.
Yeah, I think especially because of the times that we're going through, obviously through coronavirus, I think that the Supreme Court would likely try and eliminate as much controversy, because if they do rule in one favor or not, the whole country's already pretty divided. Obviously, Biden has what like 5 million more votes, but it's
Right.
like what like 49, 48% of this country that has voted for Trump. So
Yep.
there's still like it's almost going to be like you're putting two sides against each other, and especially if they reverse, if they call it fraudulent, then the amount of outcry from Biden supporters is going to be great. But if the Supreme Court rules in Biden's favor, then you can say even though the Republicans have a majority in the Supreme Court, there truly was no mail-in ballot voter fraud in this election.
Exactly.
And then Biden has already set up a plan for various executive orders reversing Trump regulations. Do you think this would be too much too soon?
Um, so I'd have to like go look a bit more into Biden's executive orders and his
Mhm.
plan. I know that he set up a transition team already to help with the transition to his presidency. Um, and I know that he's focusing on some like major issues, such as like I saw something that said that like one of like the executive orders is geared towards the Paris Climate Accord. I mean that the U.S. will rejoin it in January. And so it's like something like that. It's like I don't think that's too soon. Like I think the U.S. like needs to join the Paris Climate Accord back right away if there's any chance at all of like solving this climate change problem, right? Um, I think, yeah, I just have to look more into it. Like
Yeah, especially
some social issues, like going, it's like maintaining like the Paris Climate Accord, stuff like that. Like that makes sense, but like, yeah,
especially with like climate change and coronavirus policies. I think those are two things that need like the immediate attention of Biden. So I think
right,
he'd be right to start off his presidency addressing those problems. But I don't think he
exactly.
should make too many drastic changes when we're already going through such a tough time in
I mean,
America.
the other thing is he might be making some like in that executive order, he might be like in those executive orders, he might be making like some sort of change in like how the US is responding to the coronavirus pandemic.
Mhm.
Um, and that could be something that like I would be okay with, especially because we need some change in our stance right now.
Yeah, I completely agree with that.
Cool. So I think that's it for that story about the presidential election. Going forward, we're going to see, like next week, we'll probably talk a bit more about this to see how this election has proceeded. Because states, like the next step is states have to finalize all their votes. The recounts have to happen in certain states. And then in December, the electors will get together, they'll vote, um, and then Biden gets sworn in next year, like in beginning of 2021 January.
If
Um,
Trump doesn't win those
yeah,
anymore.
if it's maintained as it is right now. Um, so we'll see how it progresses. We'll see if we get any new information next week. Okay, now on to the W segment for this week. Um, so Vinay, our first story actually comes from our home state of Washington,
Hmm.
where a cat named Panda escaped his owner's house in Thurston County, and wandered off to like a mailing station, um, and they spent a week looking for the cat, and the cat was actually at a transit center in Rochester, Washington, and
Mhm.
in that transit center, the cat somehow wandered onto a shipping container, and that
What?
shipping container was sent to Kenai, Alaska.
Wow.
So they figured out. So after posting, at least the owners, after posting a photo of the cat on like a lost pets group, they found out that the cat turned up in a Home Depot store in Alaska.
Wow. I mean, that's my main thing. Just like, wow. And do you know if the cat actually like came back to its owners?
Yeah. So it looks like what happened was a there's a pets like a lost like pets group that like
Mhm.
helped return the cat back. Um, like return the cat back like after they put a chip on like the cat, and then they help to like bring it back to Washington for the owners. And that group is called United Angels, which is a Washington state nonprofit. And they help like coordinate the cat's like flight home completely free.
That's some wholesome content, especially from that nonprofit that you're talking about. Because
Right.
like losing that cat must have been so stressful for the family. But I'd also say that putting that chip in the cat, like obviously you don't want to have chips in people, but that's pretty witty of them. That's pretty smart of them because who knows, maybe the cat could wander off again.
Yeah, exactly. They don't want to lose the cat. So our next story um, actually comes up from Ireland, where a couple of surfers actually found a time capsule that came from the North Pole. And the time capsule actually like came from a ship um, about like years and years ago. Um, it was actually dropped, I think, in 2018. And so when they opened the time capsule, um, it showed like there showed pictures of like a Russian and an English crew from a ship called 50 Years of Victory, which was a nuclear powered Russian icebreaker ship, who they tossed the time capsule into like an ice floe at the North Pole, and it got like encapsulated in ice, and it was frozen there. Um, and this time capsule had like photographs, like a menu, wine corks, badges, like other items from like beer mats and other items from the ship's crew.
Hmm.
Um, and it's really interesting because like it was originally dropped in 2018, and the people who wanted to like who dropped it wanted it to be found like 30 or 40 years later, but it shows the actual like pace of climate change because it must have meant that the ice in the very North Pole had melted. So this was like the actual like 90-degree point of the North Pole. Like they got a helicopter and they put it right there on like
Wow.
the top. And it means the ice must have melted and it traveled 4,000 kilometers in 2 years.
That's really, really worrisome for me because of climate. Like, obviously, we knew that climate change is a big problem, but
Right.
if it's progressing so fast that something that was intended to only show up 30 or 40 years later is now just showing up 2 years later, that's just like a really, really fast rate of climate change and how the ice is melting and how the currents are speeding up. And that's how the capsule is ultimately found then.
Definitely. Okay. The next story comes from Japan, where a fruit lover uh paid 9,600 or $9,600 for a single crate of Japanese mandarin oranges in a market in Tokyo. Um, this was like a major auction uh, because apparently Japanese like mandarin oranges are like extremely valuable, and they're known for like they're like prized and like known for being sweet, seedless, and easy to peel.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I don't really know why it's worth so much money, but apparently it is.
Wow. Wait, do you know how many oranges or mandarins are in that crate?
Yeah, there were 100 mandarin oranges.
Wait, so 9.6 thousand for 100 oranges.
Yeah, it's a lot.
I
It
mean,
says that in that package. So obviously it says like it's roughly around $96 per orange. Um,
mhm.
but in June, a harvest of those mandarin oranges was sold for around $966 dollars a piece, and boxes of 25 were sold at $96.6 a piece, and boxes of 25 were sold at around $2,493.
I mean, originally I was going to say it's pretty wasteful of them to spend so much money on that. But if you're saying that the price has actually gone down, that this was a bargain price that they got the mandarins for, and that's just like, I feel like whoever buys those oranges is really wasting their money. Because, like, I'm not sure, obviously, we haven't tasted those oranges. We probably wouldn't be able to afford those oranges. But if we do, I'm not sure if any fruit is worth $96 just for one fruit.
Yeah, definitely. And I think like also these oranges are packaged in like a special Japanese box that was designed really well, and I'm not sure if that added to the value, or if it was mainly just like the sugar content of the oranges.
I think, in my opinion, it's still wasteful for that.
Yeah,
So much
definitely.
just for one orange.
Okay. So our next story comes from Singapore, where a cruise line launched its first cruise to nowhere because Singapore residents were getting like so sick of like staying home and in their own country. This cruise line launched a cruise to nowhere where they'd board a cruise. All passengers would get coronavirus tested, and then they'd just kind of like sail in the sea for a little bit and do what normal you normally do on cruises, and it would end back in Singapore.
I mean, I think that's pretty wise because it's a way for Singapore residents to get out of the country while not actually like going to a different country and risking their lives in this pandemic. Like, obviously, this must be a great way to get out of the house, get out of the country, but also not to put themselves at great risk by going to a country where maybe there's a high risk of getting coronavirus.
Right, absolutely. Um, and then our final story comes from Brazil, where a pair of black neoprene gloves made using a 3D printer allowed a famous Brazilian pianist named João Martins
Mhm.
to like play the piano again. Um, so Martins, he like originally was like playing the piano, but in 1995, he wasn't able to use his right, like he lost use to his right hand through a mugging when he was in Bulgaria. These
Wow.
bionic gloves allowed him to finally play the piano again.
I mean, that's just, I think I already used this adjective before, but that's just wholesome content. Like seeing how much technology is solving problems today. Where obviously this was an unfortunate incident to happen to that Brazilian pianist. But for him to be able to play the piano again through bionic gloves, that's just really heartwarming to see.
Right. So for years, it's interesting because for years, he was actually playing the piano with only one hand, with his right hand, because
Hmm.
with his left hand because he lost use. Um, so I
So
guess
he
that's
just
pretty
only with
interesting.
one hand he was still able to be a pretty successful piano player.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
Cool. That's all the stories I have.
Okay. Thank you for joining us to the RV show today. Next week, we'll hope to get more updates on the election, see how Trump will be able to contest the election results if he is able to, and hopefully it doesn't challenge our democratic values too much.
Cool. Thank you guys.
What's up, everyone? Vinay here from the RV show. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Make sure you like the video and subscribe to stay updated on all of our new content. Also, if you are looking for past episodes, check out our YouTube playlist.